MAC-Based Authentication is a network access control method that authenticates devices based on their MAC addresses. It's a great way to control network access for devices that may not support traditional username and password logins like printers, phones, or IoT equipment. The switch uses the device's MAC address as the username to authenticate against a Radius server. MAC authentication can be done with or without EAP encapsulation depending on the setup. In this episode of Cisco Tech Talk, I'll show you how to set up a MAC-based authentication on a Catalyst 1300 switch via the Graphical User Interface, GUI, next. Before I start configurations, here's an overview of my network topology. I'll use two Catalyst 1300 switches. One will act as the Radius server, and the other will function as the authenticator. The authenticator is responsible for validating the devices, known as supplicants, before they're allowed to access the network. First, configure the switch that will serve as the Radius server. After logging into the GUI of the Radius server switch, switch to Advanced View. Then, scroll to the Security section in the menu. From here, go to the Radius server and then Radius server global settings. Enable the Radius server status option and click Apply to activate it. Next, under Radius server keys, create a new key. You'll need to enter the IP address of the authenticator switch for this step. Make sure you note it from your topology diagram and enter it into the appropriate field. Also, provide the key or shared secret for the authenticator. Apply your changes. Now you can move on to Radius server groups. Create a new group. Feel free to give it any new name you like. You can leave all other settings at the default for this demonstration. The next step is to configure the user that will authenticate via MAC address. Under Radius server users, create a new user. For the username, enter the MAC address of the device you want to authenticate. The MAC address should be formatted with colons separating every 2 characters. It should also be entered with uppercase letters. This will be important in later steps. Assign the group you just created. Provide a password for the device and hit Apply. With the Radius server configuration complete, it's time to move on to the authenticator switch. After logging into the GUI of the authenticator switch, head into the security section again. Add the Radius server by entering the IP address of the server switch. Reference your topology as needed. You can set a priority for the server if desired, but the default setting will work for most cases. Apply your changes. If you didn't specify the password during this step, be sure to enter it now so the authenticator and server can communicate securely. The next step is to configure the 802.1x authentication properties. Enable port-based authentication and set the authentication method to Radius. Optionally, you can enable MAC authentication failure and success traps to get alerts for those events. Apply these changes. Go to MAC-based authentication settings. Specify the MAC address format you used earlier. I used a group size of 2, colon as the separator, and uppercase letters. Enter the device password and apply the settings. Go to Host and Session Authentication. Select the port where you'll connect your supplicant device. In this example, I'm using port 1 and setting it to allow multiple sessions. Choose the option that fits your use case. After that, head to port authentication. Select the same port and set it to auto. Ensure MAC-based authentication is enabled as the authentication type for this port. Great! Everything should be set. Now you can test to make sure the configurations work as expected. Connect your device to the configured port and wait for the device to be authorized. Check the logs for authorization messages. Under the 802.1x authentication section, check the authenticated host list to confirm the device appears as authenticated. After waiting a moment, I can see in my logs that the port has been authorized. Checking the authenticated hosts confirms the device is listed, which means the authentication was successful. For more details, you can always refer back to the logs. Here you can see that the port has been authorized using the MAC address. Great! Everything works as expected. There you have it. MAC-based authentication on Catalyst 1300 switches, helping you securely control which devices can access your network, even if they don't support standard user logins. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.